Start by you telling us how you became a graphic designer. I mean, were you an artist? What inspired you to become a designer to begin with? And then we can move into your work on Olympic history and the visual grammar and design history of the Olympics.
Yes, well, everything started during school time. I love to paint, to draw, I played music for many years, and but I never was so conscious or aware that I was good enough to make a graphic design study. So I didn't have that on my mind first, and I started studying economy here in Switzerland at the university, but I didn't felt really happy doing this. It was not so how you say I didn't feel so comfortable with so dry material. So after 1.5 years studying economy, I decided to change. But the moment really was when I changed these ideas. I went to a person to make to find out if I'm good enough to make such a study. And I made some tests, and we had a long talk. And they say, yes, no problem. You are able to do this. So this gave me a confidence, and I needed that confirmation that I was good enough to do this. So I applied for 2 art universities here in Switzerland, almost at the same time, to find out if maybe someone will take me. And I was so surprised. Both accepted me to start doing these studies. And then I decided to do this here in my hometown in St. Gallen. So that's how everything started. And at the same time, during the years in Ecuador, where I lived until I was 19, I started with equestrian sports. I think I was 12 or 13. So sports was really a big part of my life. I spent, I will say, 6 days a week making sports, 3, 4, 5 hours a day. So sports was really on top, and school was less important for me on that time. But it was a fantastic time. And when you train and you go to competitions, and then you have always goals in front of you. And one of the goals was, one day I want to go to the Olympic Games. So this is, it sound for me on that time like almost impossible to reach this goal. But I had them in my mind always. And the Olympics, I followed, and I knew exactly who was participating, and who was the Olympic champion, and what team won, and things like that. So I was aware about the Olympics and what this means exactly, and my studies. And I brought these 2 things together at the end when I decided to make my thesis in the art university. I decided to go deeper into the topics graphic design, corporate identity of Olympic Games. And that was really the moment when I went to the Olympic Library in Lausanne. It's about 3.5 hours from here, from my hometown. And I was so surprised about these wonderful books they had there. And this was the moment when a door was open for me with such a rich content that I felt like I want to know everything on that. I didn't know where to start, but the Barcelona Olympic Games was really that at that moment the most important thing. Everyone was talking about this. The preparation for the games were on, and so I saw the first time the design manual of Barcelona, and also from Lillehammer, that was in 1994. So I'm talking about 1991, something around that I visited the Olympic Library. And this was amazing, really amazing. I knew when I had this, especially the books from Lillehammer, uh, it came to my mind, I want to have this book. This book is so good, so amazing. Should I run out and leave the library with a book in my arm? But I didn't finally. But a few years later, I got this book also. And I did everything to get one copy for me. So this was really the beginning of coming into the graphic design, Olympic Games, and bring these two things together.
That's fantastic. Since yesterday, you're the second graphic designer or production designer, graphic designer with whom I've spoken who worked for the Olympics.
Oh, really?
And I'll tell you, a gentleman yesterday who's the head of digital archives and digital images at the Brazil Olympic Committee. But you're the first graphic designer, visual artist that I've ever met who aimed to go to the Olympics and made it. Because visual artists say, oh, it's like the Olympics of graphic design, of arts, like having an exhibition at the Met or something like that. But I'm a graphic designer. I want to go to the Olympics, and you made it. That's brilliant. Fair play.
It for me was quite logical to go there, because when you see all the preparations they do, first on a paper, and then they prepare all the material, they start doing the fences, the flags, the medals, the torches, and everything. You want to see the result at the end, how it looks really in three-dimensional, in real. So I had to go and make photographs and be there on all these important points. So that's why I started to go in 1994 for my first, this was the first Winter Olympics, and then Atlanta, 1996, and so on, until Pyeongchang was the last I have been.
And visual communication, I think, is enormously important in a truly global event like the Olympics. I mean, I can't think of any other event that's as all-inclusive, global, participatory as the Olympics. And because you're dealing with so many cultures, so many languages, that textual communication is great, and it's how it's translated into different languages. But obviously, it's nearly impossible to cover all the languages that are spoken, official, unofficial, and so on. But visual communication is truly the key to reach the greatest number of people. Like, truly, it's what cinema claims to be, right? It's the language of, it's beyond language and whatever it is that, I forget what they say when you go to the movies and they play that, cinema movies are a global language. But in terms of graphic design, so you're really studying the foundation of history of how sports, and in this case, the Olympics, but really sports are communicated to the masses, right? It's absolutely fascinating. So we can, if you want to touch upon your collecting interest, your interest in collecting Olympic history and memorabilia and archives and documents, just a little. Yeah,
well, on the part of history, you have to know that everything really started on modern graphic design in Tokyo 1964. The reason was, you have to imagine, for the first time, the Olympics were going to Asia, to Japan. And, Japanese is a language that people only speak in Japan and not other countries. So this case was really, and you have to say also, not many people speak English in Japan. So it was really a need to find a language that will work for everyone. And that's also the reason why the pictograms were invented, because the pictograms, they don't need a language, a written language. They need only symbols that will be understood by everyone. It doesn't matter what cultural background you have. So that was really a need, and it's now very common. Every Olympics have their pictograms, but you cannot express ideas in 10, 15 languages to touch half of the audience. That's impossible. So finally, English is the basic language for all the Olympics. Even French is part of it, and the national language also. But on that time, this was so new, and people, they found out this is absolutely a need to do this. And that's why pictograms were reduced to a basic language, and the Olympics were the platform where this was invented. So today it's very common, and everyone is doing this. So you find pictograms on every mobile phone or on every toilet or whatever, but this was invented at the Olympics. So before 1964, they had a kind of pictograms, but they were more illustrations, very complicated drawings, saying in paintings that this is, for example, something about athletics, but not very simple to understand it. So was very amazing how a need become something normal after many years. And when I found out that about the history of all these things that are going to be developed or were developed in the past, I started to collect documents, design manuals, objects that proves this, how they changed. And this was also part of my knowledge, or became a part of my knowledge, to compare these things. So if, for example, if you see a daily program from Melbourne 56, Rome 1960, and Tokyo 64, and you compare this, you see exactly how the things were moving on and changing. So if you don't have this, it's difficult to see the changes. And that's why I thought it's so important, not because I wanted to have these objects just for fun, because I can study it and I can go deeper into this and understand better why, the reason why.